The Five Nights at Freddy's movie has finally come out. After almost a decade of waiting, fans of the franchise got to see those iconic creepy robots on the big screen. And hated it. The FNAF movie currently sits at a lowly 5.5 stars on IMDb. It's even lower on Moldy Fruit. But why? What makes this movie so disappointing? Well, I've compiled the list of a few common complaints that I've heard about the film, and I'm going to explain why I think they're wrong. Let's begin. As soon as the movie was announced, there was an immediate question everyone had. What would the rating be? Because despite the truly sadistic lore behind the games, the actual games themselves have always been rather tame, especially for a horror franchise. There has hardly ever been that much blood. Sure, a lot of people in the story have died, including the player every night you fail the game. But all that animation is just a jump scare that cuts to static after a couple of seconds. Because of the lack of gore in the game and the popularity that the series has on YouTube, the games have attracted a rather young fan base. Preteens and teenagers make up the largest demographic of fans this franchise has. So, for a movie studio, that means your key demo is that same group of people, which is why Blumhouse chose a PG-13 rating for the film. And for marketing, it just makes sense. On the other hand, that also limits what the film can do. Because yes, while the games don't really show that much of the underlying serial killer murdering kids stuff, the movie kind of has to. It can't get away with just Atari-like graphics and cutscenes after you die, which is hard to do while you're working under a PG-13 guideline. On top of that, the actual robot killing stuff has to be heavily censored to not show too much, lest they get the dreaded R rating and lose out on a lot of money. But I think the film does an admirable job of working around those limitations. Yes, not much blood is shown in the movie when people do die, but that doesn't mean the deaths are uncreative. The best one has the movie's fake babysitter follow a ghost to the back room of the pizzeria where Freddy is standing, waiting. As she approaches, closer and closer to the robot's mouth. Yeah! A woman gets chopped in half in this movie! And call me crazy, but I don't need to see the blood in the scene to get the picture. This goes for most of the deaths. They tend to cut just before the animatronic actually has to do something grotesque, but that doesn't mean that they feel less menacing. In fact, I would argue that that actually helps them feel more intimidating because the suits they built for the movie don't have to run into any limitations of their design. They can kill in any way you want if you just imagine it. It's the same principle Steven Spielberg pioneered back in 1975 when he directed Jaws. The animatronic shark in that movie was a nightmare to work around. It would constantly malfunction in the water, it just didn't look right, it would shake constantly, and when it was on screen for any real length of time, you could clearly tell that it was just a fake robot. And when audiences can see that, it loses the effect of frightening you. So Spielberg just didn't show it that much. And because of that, it doesn't feel like just an ordinary run-of-the-mill B-list shark movie. That tension is always there. Now, I'm not saying the FNAF movie is as effective with this idea as Jaws was, but it still works well enough. Story time. I did not watch this movie on opening day like I had intended, because I had to work 4 days in a row. Anyway, it took a little bit to watch. While I didn't see too many spoilers, except for Matt Pat, damn it, I did hear two things about the movie. One, it wasn't that scary, and two, this.
It needs to be big, so we can all fit inside.
This one scene almost made me not want to watch the movie. Keep in mind, I didn't actually see the clip, I just heard people talking about it. But when I heard that someone said, the animatronics build a fort in the movie, I was extremely scared they would lean too much into it being a kid's movie, a kid-friendly movie. But after seeing it and thinking about it a little bit more, it does make some sense. After all, they are kids who haunt the robots. They were all around 7 or 8 when they did die. And yes, they are vengeful spirits, but they don't have to be vengeful all of the time. Especially around other kids, which is what Abby is in this scene. She's a child. They feel like they get to play with a friend, a chance that was taken away from them by the purple guy. So yes, it does sound and look pretty silly, but when you think about it, it makes sense. Especially since they still do have time to be vengeful at the end of the movie. might be the biggest criticism of the film. It's a horror movie that never quite feels scary enough. Yes, there is some tension. Yes, there is some mystery. Yes, there are some deaths. But overall, the best way I can describe it is it's just a good kids horror movie. If I saw this when I was like 8, I would probably still be shitting my pants right now. But as an adult, the story is more interesting than the actual horror is. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have a great rebuttal for this. If you don't find it scary, I get it. If that's all you wanted from this film, I get why you would rate it kind of low. But hear me out. The games are like this too. Fundamentally, the story of a man killing kids and stuffing their dead, decaying corpses in a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff is infinitely more terrifying than this. So I would argue in a way the movie is very faithful to its source material. And if you don't care about the games, let me read you a review of the movie left on IMDb by user Liam3011 that perfectly sums up what I'm trying to express. Now, personally, I don't find the concept of FNAF all that scary, so I personally wasn't scared watching this. The jump scares were effective, but did this movie ever really make me feel uneasy? No, not really. But again, that's a personal preference and not a dig at the movie at all. The sound design, cinematography, and overall design of everything, from the animatronics to the actual restaurant, is incredible. Out of the horror movies I've seen, I'd honestly say this is one of the more lighthearted ones. There's a lot of humor here, as well as moments that do kind of make you think, is this a horror film? It's not balls to the walls scary, but I honestly don't think it was trying to be, nor does it need to be. It's just a fun film with horror elements to me. Overall, really enjoyed it, and would recommend it if you're wanting to watch something for the spooky season that's not too intense. It'd also be a great entry for anyone just getting into horror movies. As a fan of the games who have been waiting for almost a decade for this movie, I can say I'm pretty satisfied. Do I think it's a masterpiece of cinema? No. Is it my favorite movie of all time? No. Hell, is it even that scary? Not really. But I'm also happy with what it is. It's a dumb, fun movie that the whole family can find something to like about it. I watched the movie with both of my parents who know nothing about the games. My mom doesn't even like horror movies, but they both said it was better than what they expected when I said we should watch a movie based off a game where you don't move and just click buttons to avoid. I haven't even touched on how amazing the robots looked. They didn't use CGI. All of these were made either as actual robots or suits that body actors wore while chasing people around. And never for a moment did I find it too artificial. The cupcake was the only one, at least that I could tell, that was CGI at one point, but even that was just for a movement you couldn't achieve with practical effects. If you are not a fan of the games and just a movie critic, I understand why this movie could feel generic. I don't think it's that scary. I think the twist at the end is predictable, even if you don't know the story of the games, and I think it's just a concept that has been done before. But that doesn't make it a bad movie. If you do like the games, I think there's a lot to appreciate here. And probably better than most people expected based off of how the newest game performed.
You still there? Oh, there you are. Oh, I see. A little strange.
Overall, I would score the Five Nights at Freddy's movie a solid 7.5 out of 10.